Hey, thanks for stopping by. I'm Lacey, and I see you just met my dog Grace. We love it when new visitors come by. I think the name of my channel makes it pretty clear that I'm a dog mom on a budget. But don't be fooled, Grace is spoiled. So today, I'm going to show you how to make a snuffle mat. And all you're going to need is a pair of raggedy old sweatpants you have laying around the house and a dish drying mat. When I started looking into snuffle mats for Grace, I was finding them online for on average about 25 bucks. But I even found some that were going for 40, 60, $80. That's outrageous. But get this, I made my snuffle mat for $1. Okay, $1.25. I bought my drying mat before Dollar Tree raised the prices. So besides the sweatpants and the mat, you're going to need scissors for this project. I'm showing a pair of plain old craft scissors, the pink pair, and the black pair are fabric shears made by Fiskars. Either will work. Now I'm showing you a rotary cutter. This is a great tool to save you time. Just make sure that if you do use a rotary cutter, you protect your work surface. This one is also from Fiskars. The last thing you need for our project is something to measure with. I'm going to be using my cutting mat, but you can absolutely use just a ruler. Don't think that you have to have fancy tools to do this. A ruler and a pair of scissors gets the job done. Just remember, if you choose to use a rotary cutter, you need a cutting mat or something to protect your surface. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take the elastic ankle band off of the sweatpants. I'm having a thought as I'm doing this voiceover and seeing the video, but you could totally keep the ankle band and use it as a scrunchie. If you're really trying to be frugal, it would work. Okay, so I'm finished with the ankles. So now we're going to turn the pants over and start working on the pockets. I'm going to turn them inside out and then we're going to cut them out. Whoop, peekaboo! I told you these were an old pair of sweatpants. This part's super easy. I'm just cutting around the pocket, following along the seam. I promise you, this is really easy. I don't know why I'm making it look so hard. Oh wow, I'm still going at these pockets. Oh, ta-da! There, she got it. So now I'm thinking I should save the string. It could be great for another craft. But that thing was tied so tight, I finally just said, forget this, and I cut it. And then, look at this. What is going on with this? I can't even pull it out of here. So finally, I'm like, I'm calling it. And I'm just gonna cut this thing off. I cut right up to the edge of where the band is connected to the pants and then just followed right along with my scissors. I mean, that was the end goal the entire time, is remove the waistband. Well, I am sorry, you guys. Apparently, editing Lacey thought you needed a detailed demonstration of how to cut. Either that or it is the longest waistband ever. Okay, here we go. Moving on. So now I'm preparing to cut the outside of the leg. I'm lining up at the pocket first and then working my way down the length of the leg, trying to get a decent fold. It doesn't have to be perfectly sharp and creased, just so you have a guideline. And then I'm cutting down the length of the leg. And remember, this is the outside of the leg. And apparently I thought we needed another cutting demonstration. And remember, this does not have to be perfect. Nothing about this project is perfect. It's just a fun project to do for yourself, and your dog's going to end up having fun with it. So once you finish that side, you're going to repeat it on the other side. And we are going to have a lot of deconstructing to do, but it's only to make sure we get the most material possible from these pants. Now we're going to cut along the butt seam. And I gotta know, does anybody else have this problem that the first place to wear out on their pants is right there on the inner thigh? If this happens to you, please comment it down below, because I'm thinking I'm the only person in the world. Next, I want to get rid of the lump that is created from where the seam was in the pants. So I'm just cutting along that thin little strip, getting rid of that excess fabric. And now we have a pretty straight piece of fabric to work with. Laying it out, trying to figure out how wide I want my strips to be. I'm thinking approximately 1 inch. And right here, you're just seeing my creative process. I'm trying to decide, how long do the strips need to be? How wide do they need to be so that they can fit through the squares on the mat, but also be thick enough that they hide the treats that we're gonna put into the mat. Right now my strip is about 12 inches long. And here I'm trying to decide, do I want to put strips around the outside edge of the mat? Which I ultimately decide, no. So here I'm still trying to figure out placement and length and things like that. I'm taking the strip and coming up through the back of the mat and putting it around one of those strips of plastic that go between the squares. And I'm just gonna do 2 overhand knots. I like it. I think it looks good. It's a little bit long, but I for sure know that I want my strips to be about 1 inch wide. And it does not have to be perfect. It could be a little less, a little more. Nothing is perfect about this project. So we still have about a 12-inch strip, and I'm going to cut it in half. And that's going to be the approximate length that I want each strip to be. If I were to redo this and I had more fabric to waste, I probably, instead of having a 6-inch strip, would have went for more like an 8-inch strip and cut off any excess that was too long once it was tied to the mat. You'll see why I say that in a little bit. So here I'm adding that next strip. I went up through the back and tied 2 overhand knots on that strip of plastic that goes between the squares. Just taking a look at it. I think I'll even them up, deciding if I like the length at 6 inches. And I think it will be a good length for Grace to be snuffling around in. So now I gotta figure, do I want to skip a full square for where I tie my strips on, or do I want to go in a crisscross pattern for each one? If I go in a crisscross pattern, I'll have a much fuller mat, and that's the way I decide to go. The fuller the mat, the longer your pet is going to be occupied with the toy, because it's going to hide those treats better. So here I am on the piece of plastic that's going upward from the 2 knots that I just did. And I just went up through the back, around the piece of plastic, and did 2 knots. So now we have 3 in like a V shape is how they're placed right now. And I'll do a 4th one at the top there. And that will be our pattern for the entire mat. So now that I know exactly how I want my placement to go, the approximate size, I'm going to get all of my cutting out of the way. So I just go right to it. This is where the rotary cutter is really nice. You just zip right through them. And apparently, I think you need a long demonstration of how to use a rotary cutter. And remember, I'm not being perfect with any of these strips. Some of them are a little less than 1 inch. Some of them are a little more than 1 inch. And you will find that as you're working your way down the length of the pant leg, the width of the strip, not the width, the length of your strip is going to change as the fabric gets more narrow towards the ankle of the pant. And I just made that work. On those, I didn't cut them down the middle. I just planned for those to be, tie them on and trim off any excess. And this is still only the first pant leg that I am cutting the strips from. I haven't even touched the second pant leg. And off the top of my head, I think when I counted on the mat, I needed around maybe 220 strips total. And this pair of pants just made it. I think I had 1 strip left. Right here, I didn't like how it was coming out to a triangle. I wanted to kind of even it up a little bit, so I just trimmed off that excess. So I had a straighter piece of fabric to work with. And now we're really cooking. And here's those pieces that I won't be cutting in half. They're not long enough. All right, all of our strips are ready to go. So we've got our first 3 already tied on. Here comes number 4. It's going up through the back on each side of that plastic strip. And 2 knots. And you can kind of see here that I'm struggling with the length of it. That's why I think I wish I would have went longer. And I'll show you it here in a second. I ended up getting blisters from how hard I had to pull on these tiny little strips. So right here's a close-up. You can see the 4 corners of where I tied the knots. And this is the view from the back side. So here we go. We're going to continue on with the first row, keeping with that same pattern. Up through the back for each one and 2 knots. Literally by the end of this first row, I had blisters on my fingers. So that's why I wish I would have went with a longer strip, because since they were so short, I had to have so much force to pull them so they didn't slip from my fingers. Just fluffing it up, making sure that I'm happy with how things are laying. Because I didn't want them to really like stick in the same direction. I wanted them going all wonky every which way. But that's what it should look like as you go along. Kind of like a little checkerboard pattern. We're almost to the end of that first row. Here's a close-up of how I'm going through the back. I put it through each hole and then pull them through. And then 2 knots. Again, up through the back. You're going through 2 separate holes. This is the up and down strip. The others we'll call the side to side strip. Just a couple more. Through the back of one side and out the other side. And a double knot. I think we got one more on this row. And this is going... Oh, I think I just noticed the blisters. Yup. No joke. Make them a little bit longer than 6 inches, and that might not happen to you. I did come up with a solution to make it a little more comfortable, though. I think you'll see it here in the next clip. Looks like they're going to be a nice length. And here's where I was trying to figure out exactly how many in total I was going to need. The rubber gloves, I know they look silly, but this was the solution to help with the blister problem. I ended up bandaging up the blisters and then putting these rubber gloves on there, and it gave it like some good traction, so I didn't have to pull as hard. So I would highly recommend wearing the rubber gloves just to prevent any chance of blisters. And you can see here, that was one of the strips that I wasn't able to cut in half because it wasn't quite 12 inches. So I just trimmed it down to match the length of the rest of the mat. Fluffing it out. These sweatpants, you can see all the little fuzzies that kept coming off of them. They were a mess. And another thing that I did notice, the further I got along on the mat, it would get a little bit confusing to find the strips you were putting through once you flipped it over. So just kind of got to stay focused, but this is a great project to just put on a movie or put on a TV show you like to binge and sit and work on it. It's not a race. Your pet will be patient. All right. Last row. I'm getting excited there. And this was another technique that I found made it go a little bit faster. I would put, I believe, 4 through the back before I flipped it over, and then I would tie all of those. And then move on to the next set of 4. That did help it go faster. That's another tip I can share with you. On some of them that were a little bit shorter, I would give them a little bit of a stretch. It didn't stretch a whole lot, but just a little bit of a tug to make it so it would tie easier. And there we go, tying the last one up. A view of the back. And literally 1 strip left over. Those pants barely made it. Here's a close-up so you can really see that pattern. Give it a really good fluff to try to get all those sweat pant fuzzies out. Otherwise, your pup is going to go into a sneeze fest when they start snuffling around. It turned out nice and thick, so stuff will hide in it really well. Time to add our treats. So I'm using these Blue Dog Bakery Softies, the peanut butter flavor. And the Canine Carryouts beef flavor. I took 2 of each treat out and cut them into really small pieces to hide in the mat. And just from what you see on that plate, I refilled the mat with that probably 4 times. So she thought she was getting a ton of treats, but really only 2. Well, it would have been 4. So now we got to start hiding the treats. You can put as many or as few in the mat as you'd like. I think it would be a great training game if you only put just 1 treat in there and hit it. And then they have to sniff that out. I want to thank you guys for watching today. My name's Lacey, and I hope you'll join me for the next one. Shall we see if Grace likes her new toy?